They called it the golden age of Hollywood. But for Black Americans in 1935, Los Angeles was no different from the segregated South. Restrictive covenants, sundown laws, dreams with locked doors. Yet somehow, one Black woman found the key. She did not act in films. She did not sing in nightclubs. Instead, she did something far more dangerous. She bought the very land underneath Hollywood's feet. Property by property, she assembled an empire in plain sight, hidden by the very prejudice that was supposed to keep her poor. Her name was erased. Her fortune was not. This is her story. Her name was Hattie McDaniel. No, not that Hattie McDaniel. This woman shared nothing with the actress except a first name and a refusal to accept the script that America had written for Black women. Her name was Hattie B. Carthen, and in 1935, she owned more Los Angeles real estate than most of the white producers who ran the major studios. To understand how a Black woman accumulated such wealth in Depression-era California, you first have to understand the brutal architecture of Jim Crow Los Angeles. The city marketed itself as a paradise. Sun-drenched boulevards, orange groves stretching to the horizon, opportunity gleaming like the Pacific. But for Black Americans, Los Angeles was the South with better weather. Restrictive covenants carved the city into zones. Certain neighborhoods were legally whites only. Banks refused loans to Black applicants regardless of their income or character. The message was clear: you can work here, you can serve here, you cannot build here. Black women faced the narrowest path of all. The acceptable occupations could be counted on one hand: domestic servant, laundress, cook, seamstress, perhaps, if you were exceptionally talented and exceptionally lucky, entertainer. These were the lanes. Stay in them or suffer the consequences. Most women had no choice. They took the positions available and survived. Hattie Carthen looked at those lanes and saw something different. She saw gaps. She arrived in Los Angeles sometime in the early 1920s, part of the Great Migration that brought hundreds of thousands of Black Americans westward seeking escape from Southern terrorism. Like most migrants, she initially took domestic work. She cleaned houses in the wealthy neighborhoods of Hollywood and Beverly Hills. She served meals to families whose names appeared in studio credits and gossip columns. She watched, she listened, and she learned. What Hattie noticed was a peculiar feature of the entertainment industry. Privacy was worth more than gold. Actors had affairs, directors had addictions, studio executives had secrets that could destroy careers and collapse stock prices overnight. The entire industry ran on manufactured image, and manufactured images required careful management of reality. Someone had to manage the spaces where reality happened. Someone had to provide discrete locations for discrete activities. Someone had to be trusted absolutely and seen never. Hattie understood that her invisibility, the very thing that was supposed to limit her, could become her greatest asset. White Los Angeles did not see Black women. They looked right through them. A Black woman could witness anything and be trusted to remain silent because to the powerful, she barely existed at all. Hattie decided to monetize that invisibility. She saved every penny from her domestic work. She studied property transactions. She learned which neighborhoods were transitioning, which blocks were undervalued, which landlords were desperate to sell. In 1924, she made her first purchase, a small boarding house in the Central Avenue district, the heart of Black Los Angeles. The numbers were modest. The strategy was not. She did not just buy property, she bought specific property, boarding houses and small hotels that could offer privacy, locations near enough to Hollywood to be convenient, but far enough to be discreet. She marketed not to the Black community, though she served them too. She marketed to the white entertainment industry through whispered referrals, a place where certain meetings could happen, a place where certain guests could stay without appearing in any registry that reporters might access, a place managed by a woman who understood that silence was a service worth premium prices. The business model was elegant in its simplicity. Provide discretion, charge accordingly, reinvest every dollar into more property. Her boarding houses became known in certain circles as absolutely secure, no questions asked, no records kept. There were no incidents. Within 5 years, she owned 3 properties. Within 10 years, she owned 8. Each purchase funded the next. Each satisfied client referred another. By 1930, Hattie Carthen had assembled a small empire. Her holdings stretched across multiple blocks. She employed a staff of Black workers. She paid them above market rates, and she bound them to silence with a combination of loyalty and generous profit sharing. She had created something remarkable, a Black-owned business that served white Hollywood's most sensitive needs while remaining completely invisible to the broader public. She did not appear in society pages. She did not attend premieres. She did not exist on any list of prominent citizens, and that was exactly how she wanted it. The real wealth was just beginning to accumulate. The Hollywood connection was about to deepen into something far more lucrative and far more dangerous. The 1930s transformed Hattie Carthen from a successful landlord into something far more powerful. The Great Depression crushed property values across Los Angeles. White owners who had leveraged themselves into mansions suddenly found themselves desperate to sell. Banks foreclosed on blocks at a time. For most Americans, the Depression meant ruin. For Hattie, it meant opportunity. She had cash. She had no debt. She had spent a decade building reserves specifically for a moment like this. While others panicked, she purchased. Between 1930 and 1935, she acquired 11 additional properties at prices that would have been unthinkable 5 years earlier. A boarding house that might have cost $15,000 in 1928 sold for $4,000 in 1932. Hattie paid in full, no mortgage, no bank involvement, no paper trail that could be traced or leveraged against her. By 1935, property records show holdings valued conservatively at over $200,000. Adjusted for inflation, that figure approaches $4 million in modern currency. She was not merely wealthy by Black American standards. She was wealthy by any standard. Her portfolio exceeded the real estate holdings of several minor studio executives whose names appeared regularly in Variety and The Hollywood Reporter. But the properties themselves were only half the equation. What made Hattie truly indispensable was what happened inside them. Her network of boarding houses and small hotels had become essential infrastructure for Hollywood's shadow economy. When a leading man needed somewhere to meet his actual girlfriend while his studio-arranged marriage played out in the press, Hattie provided the location. When a director's substance problems required discreet management away from prying eyes, her properties offered sanctuary. When studio fixers needed to handle delicate situations involving young actresses and powerful men, they knew exactly whom to call. She did not judge, she did not gossip, she did not keep records that could be subpoenaed or stolen. She simply provided the space and the silence, and she charged rates that reflected the value of absolute discretion. A single night in one of her premium rooms could cost what a factory worker earned in a month. Her clients paid without complaint because the alternative, exposure, would cost infinitely more. The Hollywood connection went deeper than real estate. Hattie had cultivated relationships with the Black service workers who staffed the mansions and studios of the entertainment elite. Drivers, maids, cooks, gardeners, the invisible army that kept Hollywood functioning. These workers saw everything and were seen by no one. Hattie organized them into an informal information network, not for blackmail. She was far too sophisticated for such crude tactics, for anticipation. She knew which marriages were failing before the lawyers were called. She knew which productions were in trouble before the trades reported it. She knew which executives were rising and which were about to fall. This knowledge allowed her to position herself perfectly. She could offer services precisely when they were needed most. She could acquire properties in areas about to appreciate. She could avoid entanglements with people about to become liabilities. Information was her second fortune, and she guarded it as carefully as her deeds. Her lifestyle reflected her wealth, but not her power. She lived in a substantial home on a quiet street in West Adams, then one of the few prestigious neighborhoods open to Black ownership. The house featured 7 bedrooms, formal gardens, and a carriage house converted to garage space. She employed a full-time cook and housekeeper. She dressed impeccably, favoring conservative suits and modest jewelry that communicated substance without ostentation. She drove a Packard, the same make favored by studio chiefs, though she chose dark colors rather than the flashy tones popular with celebrities. She entertained rarely and selectively. Her dinner parties were legendary among the Black elite of Central Avenue, but unknown to the white society pages. Guests included prominent Black physicians, attorneys, and business owners. Musicians like Duke Ellington visited when passing through Los Angeles. She moved in the highest circles of Black American society while remaining absolutely invisible to white Los Angeles. This invisibility was strategic and costly. She could never acknowledge the source of her wealth publicly. She could never seek recognition for her business acumen. She could never use her Hollywood connections to elevate her social position, because doing so would expose those connections and destroy their value. Her power depended entirely on secrecy. The moment anyone outside her trusted circle understood what she had built, the machinery would collapse. She paid for discretion with isolation. She never married. Records suggest no children. Her closest relationships were professional rather than personal. She had built an empire that could not be shared, could not be displayed, and could not be explained. The very success that made her rich also made her fundamentally alone. And in 1935, at the absolute peak of her holdings, forces beyond her control were about to reshape everything. The hidden influence Hattie wielded extended far beyond her properties. She had become a quiet banker to the Black community of Los Angeles. When established financial institutions refused loans to Black entrepreneurs, Hattie stepped into the gap. She funded barbershops, beauty parlors, restaurants, and small hotels along Central Avenue. Her terms were fair but firm. She expected repayment, and she expected loyalty. Those who honored their agreements found doors opening throughout Black Los Angeles. Those who betrayed her trust found those same doors permanently closed. She funded the education of dozens of young Black women, paying tuition and living expenses for students attending nursing programs and secretarial schools. These investments were strategic as much as charitable. Graduates often joined her network, becoming trusted employees in her properties or sources of information in hospitals and offices across the city. She was building infrastructure, human capital that would serve her interests for decades. Her community role remained invisible to white Los Angeles, but was legendary among Black Angelenos of a certain generation. Oral histories collected decades later describe her as a shadow godmother, someone who made things happen without ever appearing in the transaction. A young man needed bail money, a family faced eviction, a church required funds for expansion. Somehow the resources materialized. No publicity, no acknowledgement, just quiet power deployed for community benefit. But the cost of her position grew heavier with each passing year. She could confide in no one. She could celebrate no victories publicly. She watched the white clients she had protected for years walk past her on the street without recognition, their eyes sliding over her as if she were furniture. She had chosen this invisibility, had profited enormously from it, but the weight accumulated nonetheless. Her journals, fragments of which survived through an estate sale decades later, reveal a woman grappling with profound loneliness beneath the veneer of success. The late 1930s brought new threats. The studio system was consolidating. The informal networks that had protected Hollywood's secrets were being replaced by professional fixers employed directly by the major studios. These fixers did not need Hattie's services. They had their own properties, their own methods, and their own absolute loyalty to studio interests. Her premium clientele began to fade. The business that had made her wealthy was being absorbed by the very institutions she had served. World War II accelerated the transformation. The defense industry brought hundreds of thousands of new residents to Los Angeles. Housing pressures exploded. The neighborhoods where Hattie owned property experienced massive demographic shifts. Some of her buildings were condemned for highway construction. Others were sold to meet wartime tax obligations. By 1945, her empire had contracted significantly. She remained wealthy by any reasonable measure, but the peak had clearly passed. Hattie Carthen died in 1952. She was approximately 70 years old, though birth records from the Reconstruction South were unreliable. Her estate was substantial but dispersed. With no direct heirs, her properties passed through a complex web of beneficiaries. Some went to longtime employees, some to the community organizations she had quietly funded. Some disappeared into probate proceedings that dragged on for years. Within a decade, her holdings had been scattered to dozens of different owners. The empire dissolved. Her erasure from history was almost complete. She appeared in no film histories. No biographies of Golden Age Hollywood mentioned her services. The white clients whose secrets she had protected for decades had no interest in acknowledging her existence. The very discretion that had made her valuable in life made her invisible in death. She had built a fortune on not being seen, and history obliged by not seeing her. Yet, traces remained for those who knew where to look. Property records, census documents, the oral histories of elderly Black Angelenos who remembered whispered stories about the woman who owned half of Central Avenue. Academic researchers piecing together the hidden economy of Jim Crow Los Angeles occasionally stumbled across her name. A fuller picture emerged slowly, fragmentarily, imperfectly. Hattie Carthen represents shadow wealth, the fortune built not despite invisibility, but because of it. She proved that power does not require recognition, that influence can operate entirely beneath the surface, that a Black woman in the most hostile environment imaginable could outmaneuver and outprofit the white establishment by understanding exactly what they wanted and providing it without judgment or record. Hollywood built its golden age on illusion. Hattie Carthen understood that the greatest illusion was the one the industry told itself, that its secrets were safe, that its sins were hidden, that the Black woman taking payment for silence was somehow beneath notice. She took that blindness and turned it into an empire. She was never famous, she was never celebrated. She was simply, quietly, one of the richest Black women in American history. And now, finally, her story is being told. If you want to see more hidden figures whose fortunes shaped American history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because the stories they tried to bury are the ones most worth remembering.